Hi, I'm Kate Pomplun. I'm the owner of Aging Care Solutions, and I'm a contract care manager for Aging Outreach Services. And this is all things aging.
And I'm Amy Phariss, editor of Outreach NC, our monthly publication that has to do with all things aging. And today we're going to be talking about communication tips for engaging with people who are living with dementia.
Yes. Thanks for having me, Amy. I'm excited to talk about this.
Thanks for being here. So first, most of us have heard of dementia, but talk a little bit about exactly what it is.
So dementia is really a list of symptoms. So things that affect people's cognitive abilities, their thinking, and also their abilities to engage socially. There's a number of different types of dementias, with Alzheimer's being the most common.
Okay.
So really it's an umbrella term for those different types of.
So dementia and Alzheimer's are not separate.
Correct. Alzheimer's is a type of dementia.
What are the numbers? What are the statistics?
So right now, we have an estimated 5.2 million Americans living with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. And right here in North Carolina, it's over 160,000 people.
Wow.
And the numbers aren't going to change. In fact, by 2030, they say that we should have about 300,000 North Carolinians with a diagnosis of dementia.
So the numbers are increasing, not decreasing. Wow. Okay. So it can be really tough to know how to engage and interact with people who are living with dementia. Can you talk a little bit about that?
It is tough. If you think about it, it's kind of intimidating, as well as being a little bit emotionally overwhelming. You're not really sure how they're going to react to you, whether it's someone who's never met you before or a familiar family member. They might not remember you or recognize you. You don't know if they're going to start telling a story that you know is completely untrue and sort of how to handle that. So there's a lot that goes into it. But my hope is that by talking about it a little more today, we can discover that there are some preferred methods for how to engage someone with dementia, because it is so impactful for their journey. And the research actually shows that the more social interactions they have, it can decrease depression. It can even decrease instances of agitation. And there's enough research now that shows the effects on the brain. It might even slow down the progression of dementia in some people.
So how we're interacting really matters.
And just the fact that someone's trying and engaging them can make a difference.
And I bet it can make a difference for both the person living with dementia and the person trying.
Absolutely.
And when you have skills, you feel, I guess, more empowered or confident about engaging.
I hope so. Yes.
Okay. So get into what are some of your top suggestions? Where do we start?
So I think it's helpful to think about, why do we have a certain approach? You know, if someone tells me how to do something, my brain first goes to, okay, why? And so research has been done to show that there is this preferred method called the person-centered care approach. And people have developed that, and there's different authors or different speakers that might title it a little bit differently. But all in all, it takes the idea of this is an individual person, and their history, their past, their personality, their social dynamics, their family makeup throughout time is a really big factor in how we can engage them, even if they do have cognitive decline. And so with this person-centered approach, it really helps if someone knows that person or has known some of their past and their history. I do want to point out that there is a distinction. The person-centered approach can be very valuable when you're engaging with folks who have dementia and providing personal or direct care to that person. It's an approach that works there, but all of the different tips and tricks, sometimes they work differently in those settings. So that could be a completely different episode all on its own.
Okay. So what are the key components of the person-centered approach?
Really just considering the environment that they're in, the person that they are, and the person that they have been, and just sort of integrating how you talk to them, the different types of activities that you can engage them with. And of course, there's not a one size fits all. You know, you can't put it in a box, because every person and every dementia journey is different.
So if you can personalize your communication, if you can draw on this person's history, past experiences, favorite music, that type of thing, does it make a difference?
Exactly. But I think we'd be smart to talk first about a few things before you even get to that point.
Okay.
It might sound simple, but even your approach to that person should be intentional. So whether it's someone you've never met before or a familiar family member, you just want to be cognizant about how you're approaching them. I think about if I was visiting someone in a facility, I might find them seated in a chair like you are, or in a wheelchair, maybe in a bed. I would never want to come up from behind them and start talking, as that could startle them, or just, they might not even realize that I'm the person talking to them. So it can be really helpful to even make a wider approach, something as simple as a smile and a wave with some eye contact before you come into their personal space, especially if you don't know the person, even if you are familiar to them. If it's a busy place and it gives them the time, if they have the ability, to kind of recognize that you're coming to engage with them. From there, you can kind of come and offer an outstretched hand. Sometimes even when people don't remember facts, they can remember social graces. So, a handshake when you see someone for the first time, or even just offering it. And we know physical touch is just so important for people to kind of trust and engage that way. So yeah, just really being aware of that physical approach. And then I also like to say it's best, of course, if you're meeting someone the first time, you're going to introduce yourself. But even if you're not, I like to say you also would want to announce. So even if it's someone that you think might know you, like a family member, if you were my mom, for example, I might say, "Hi, Mom, it's your daughter, Kate. I'm so glad to see you today." Because really what you're doing is you're taking the burden off them from having to remember you. I see a lot of well-meaning family members who, they come in and say, "Dad, it's me. Do you recognize me?" Or they do the quizzing thing of, "What did you have for breakfast today? Did you have your medicine yet? What did you do today?" And so anytime that you're engaging in a conversation, you want to relieve that burden from them of having to know how to answer something the right way.
Does that create more agitation for the person if you're kind of interrogating them? Does it feel like that?
It really can. And I'm glad you asked that because, if you and I were to get together and catch up and have a visit, I'm probably going to pepper you with questions. How are you? How are your kids? How's work going? How is that vacation? And, we can do a lot of back and forth chatting. When someone has a decline, especially from dementia or, just a cognitive type of diagnosis that doesn't allow their brain to make the connections as quickly, they might be able to respond to a question or a statement, but it might take them a little bit longer.
And they might feel nervous then if they're coming one after the other.
Yeah.
And I wonder too, if the visit with you is stressful, even if they don't remember who you are the next time you come, will they remember that feeling of stress?
Yeah, I used to do a program in South Carolina where we would train volunteers to go in to visit people in nursing homes and assisted living facilities. And we really focused on this quote from Maya Angelou. And she said, "People will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did." And I would even interject with dementia, they might forget who you are, but they won't forget the way that you made them feel. And I think that really kind of hits home as the importance of, why we want to interact socially with people, even if they can't remember it the next day.
Yeah, and with intention, like you're saying, from the very beginning. So talk about the importance of the environment. Does the environment matter at all?
The environment really can be a key factor in how successful you might be able to have a social interaction with someone with dementia. The biggest thing you want to try to do is reduce background noise, whether it's that TV blaring or music. If you're trying to interact with someone and you've done your approach part of things, but the setting in which they are in is a crowded room, maybe like a common room in a facility, something like that. So if you can, what I often do, again, I do a combination of kind of gestures. If it's a TV, I'll say to the person after I've announced myself or introduced myself, I'll say, "I have a hard time hearing. Can I turn your TV down?" or something like that. And then, if they can do it, they do it, or I go ahead and do it. Because if you really think about it, even if you don't have any memory issues, if you can't hear what someone's saying, you can't really engage with them.
And it would be distracting.
It would be.
Yeah.
If your brain is trying to function just by listening and responding, there's so many other things going on. It's hard to focus. I will say too, if you're visiting somebody in a situation where you can't control the TV or you can't control the activities or other conversations, what you can do is always ask a staff member, hey, can I, walk with so-and-so to a quieter space? Usually going outside is a really good option because all the benefits of being out in nature and then having a change of scenery can be a really good idea too. So the most quiet environment that you can be in will help you engage better.
So it sounds like it's not just what you're saying, it's how you're saying it, it's the environment that you're saying it in, and it's the intention that you have when you come into it.
Absolutely. And I would say that the intention should be mostly about that person and what they can get out of your time together. You might not get much out of it, but if you go into it knowing that and knowing that you're there to benefit them, I think you'd be surprised with the outcome.
What have you seen when you've been with family members where they have really, for lack of a better word, successful visits? Things go really well. What are the common denominators?
So finding something that is basically an activity, not a big elaborate thing, but an activity that they can engage in together, because the chit-chatting back and forth might not really last so long. Of course, music is a really good one. And looking at a book together, you could, again, go outside, walk outside. Even, it sounds kind of silly, but even watching something on television that's meaningful to the person. So I had a family that I worked with who they knew that their dad loved the Dallas Cowboys back in the era where they, went to the Super Bowl. And so they would play old recordings of those Super Bowls, and dad knew the players. Dad could talk about the players. So that's a really interesting way to reminisce. And this is where family members and close friends can really have the keys to how they can successfully engage, but then also other people. If they can create something maybe in their room or their home to give people some hints on their personalities and what they might like to do.
So like if your mom has a favorite tea, you could bring the tea and have tea with her, and that would be almost like an anchoring.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, I have had another family that was so creative. They even just made a menu. This is what mom likes to do. She lived in a facility, and she would have church members that would visit her, old neighbors that would come visit her. But then they also just knew that sometimes volunteers would come who had never really met her, or the staff would change. And so they would talk about, read her favorite Psalms from the Bible, and it's over here. Or please don't play Elvis. She wasn't allowed to listen to that. She'd get in trouble and she's going to stress out about it. So things like that. And I've seen some really beautiful photo albums, again, where the people's names are kind of labeled, the places, the favorite vacation spots, because again, you don't want to pull it out and start quizzing the person on what they want to do. And so these can, you can do these types of activities for any age. Even my kids, young kids, can do this kind of thing with a loved one or a stranger.
What advice do you give for the compulsion or the desire to correct a loved one if they're looking at a photo album and they don't know? And do you see family members trying to remind them or to correct them?
Yeah. And sometimes if you think about it, you might have people in your family where at a certain age, I look like my mom did when she was my age. And so if my grandma were to look at it and see a photo of me, she's going to think it's my mom. So you kind of have to walk this fine line of, in that situation, you might say, Grandma, that's actually me, but I look just like mom did. And then you maybe find a photo from mom at a certain time and mom now. But if that person is really pretty stuck on it, arguing is not going to help. You could move on, or you could just change the subject to, and look at that beautiful dress she had on. Let's see who else is in here, and keep going.
So again, the goal is to have a good overall experience and feeling, not to jog their memory or
get them to answer your quiz questions correctly.
What do you think the biggest, challenges for family members are when they're coming in to visit?
Well, first of all, the fact that they're coming is good, because some people use the avoidance technique because it is so hard and it's emotional. There really is even an anticipatory grief process that happens because you are losing this person, even though they're still, here with us. So the fact that you're going and trying is the first biggest step. Again, sort of that approach part of things, keep that in mind. Having an environment where they can hear you, have time to process what you're saying, and have a chance to respond is key. And then really just figuring out what they might like to hear you talk about or show them. I think about some of our gals here in Southern Pines. When you really know a person, think about, instead of someone just reading a random book versus a horse person, and you're looking through a book of, horses in the type of work that they used to do. So as much as you can kind of individualize it, they might be able to reminisce a little differently that way.
And really attach or connect to that. What are some signs during a visit that maybe this person's getting tired, or the hour that you planned isn't a good idea?
Again, like you and I could visit for an hour and it's not exhausting, but to someone who really has to work hard to even, have those social graces of how to visit with someone, it can be exhausting. So if they seem kind of fidgety, maybe a change of scenery, or again, a walk to a different spot would be helpful. Yawning, sort of disconnecting. Again, your visit could be 15 minutes and that's plenty, because again, you're engaging them and you're giving them that opportunity to feel like someone wants to pay attention to them.
What are some signs within yourself that you might be getting frustrated, or that you might need to cut the visit short?
That's a good question. I would say if you have the urge to argue or counter what they're saying, I will say I don't think the fact that you might feel emotional, you might have tears reminiscing, or you might have tears with the fact that this person that you're hoping can talk about these wonderful memories together. I wouldn't let that be a reason to cut a visit short. But if it is upsetting to you in a way where you feel angry or frustrated, maybe another time is better.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I feel like this is a holistic approach to a visit, and setting up expectations, right? I just want to have a good visit with my loved one or with the person I'm going to visit. And I want it to be a good experience versus it's going to be an hour and we're going to do X, Y, and Z.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it really kind of gives that out of the box thinking, and truly the research with all of this shows that it can be the best medicine for someone with dementia.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.